You know, there's been such a rapid shift in the real estate market that there's all these rumors floating around out there about all these foreclosures that's about to happen. I'm about to clear that up for you, and we're starting right now. Hey, welcome back, y'all. I'm Debbie Dobbins. I'm your host for this episode of Your Wichita Falls. And, you know, I find it interesting because people get into whatever conversations they get into and they don't do any research, and then they make up stories and then they pass them around on social media, on the internet, and then all of these conversations start happening that aren't true. So there's been a rapid shift in the housing market this year.
Exactly.
Everybody agree to that? Yay! But some people are raising these concerns that we're destined for a repeat of the crash we saw in 2008. Not true. Because there are many key differences between that market and this market. Trust me when I say I lived through both of them. I could see what was happening there, and there are so many things that are important to know that what's happening today and the bubble that happened in the early 2000s are not the same. So one of the key reasons this isn't like last time is the number of foreclosures in the market is much lower now. There are foreclosures. There's always foreclosures. There's always foreclosures from the history of the, giving loans. But here's a look at why there won't be a wave of foreclosures flooding the market. Not as many homeowners are in trouble this time. Last time, those designer loans, oh man, they put people in such a hard place. It was not even funny. And with the Frank-Dodd Act, as much as I hate it, it did put some restrictions on mortgage lending that doesn't exist the way that it existed in the early 2000s because the government decided to intervene. In a lot of ways, they probably shouldn't, but hey. After that last housing crash, over 9 million households lost their homes due to a foreclosure because they couldn't make those payments. They went from this to this. They had short sales and they had foreclosures because they gave the money back to the bank because, remember, everyone was upside down. Whether it's a car that's upside down or a house that's upside down, no bueno. This was in large part because of more relaxed lending standards back then. Oh my gosh, I was doing loans and I had to get out of it because I couldn't stand what the mortgage industry was doing at that point with giving anybody with a pulse a loan because they could not take out mortgages if they were to qualify today. They couldn't afford them. So these lending practices led to a wave, a huge tsunami of distressed properties, which made their way into the market and caused home values to plummet. Guess what? One of the biggest differences now is people have equity in their property. They're not underwater. But today, because we have great lending standards, they've led to more qualified buyers. People can't buy houses that aren't qualified, that they really can make the payments. There are fewer homeowners who are behind on their mortgages. Now, granted, we came out of this pandemic thing, but they put a kibosh on the foreclosures, and if people didn't catch up, then that was not something that had anything to do with the real estate market. And also they had equity in their property because of the crazy market that we just came out of. So at the Mortgage Bankers Association, they say for the second quarter in a row, the mortgage delinquency rate fell to its lowest. Did you hear that? The lowest level since MBA's survey began in 1979. What does that mean? Delinquency just means that people are late on their payments. So therefore, they're not even talking about pre-foreclosure. They're talking about the foreclosure rate is down to 3%. That's crazy. That's amazing. That's fantastic news. Because at the end of the day, people are back on the job. People are prosperous. People have equity in their property. So this third quarter of 2022, foreclosures were at their historically low averages. Well, I don't know how much more you need for information other than those statistics, but we are not looking at a foreclosure explosion. There have been fewer foreclosures over the last 2 years than any time in history. You may have seen some recent stories about the number of foreclosures rising today. But context is important. During the pandemic, the homeowners were able to pause their mortgage payments. I just said that, but using the forbearance program, they did put them on the back end of their principal. But the thing is their equity was so high at this point, they're not underwater, which is the basis of why we had the foreclosures in 2008. This program gave homeowners facing difficulties extra time to get their poop in a group or their finances in order, and in many cases, work out a plan with their lender. So things are completely different than they were in 2008. With that program, many people were concerned it would result in a wave of foreclosures. Why? Because they're not paying attention to the stats. But coming to the market, we see that they still have equity in their property, and that fear did not materialize because it was such a short period of time. And as I said, people had equity in their property. So the New York Fed shows that there's still fewer foreclosures happening today than before the pandemic. Here's a graph to show you all about that. So that means while there are more foreclosures now compared to last year when foreclosures were paused, because we're putting it in context, if there's no foreclosures allowed and you're comparing foreclosures now to zero, of course it's going to show that there's more foreclosures. But that's not the true picture. The number, the overall number, is still well below what the housing market has seen in more typical years, like 2017 and 2019. So most importantly, the number we're seeing now is still far below the number we saw during the market crash in 2008. So you can see in this graph these red bars about when that happened. So what's the big takeaway? Don't, I repeat, don't let a headline in the news mislead you like they always do. Don't watch the news. That's my advice. While foreclosures are up year over year, as I said, because we had a moratorium on there, historical context is essential to understanding this full picture. Most homeowners have more than enough equity to sell their homes if they need to move. They don't need to go into foreclosure. Many homeowners today have enough equity to sell their homes instead of facing foreclosure. Due to rapidly rising home prices over the last 2 years, the average homeowner has gained record, I repeat, record amounts of equity in their home. And if they've stayed in their homes even longer, they may have even more equity than they realize. I say this all the time. You sometimes have no idea how much your house is appreciated while you're living in it unless you have to sell it. So there's an economist at First American that says homeowners have very high levels of tappable home equity today, providing a cushion to withstand potential price declines, but also prevent housing distress from turning into a foreclosure. So that equity is something that I've talked about on many videos. That is the best thing that's come out of these last 2 years. The result will likely be more of a foreclosure trickle than a tsunami like we saw in 2008. So a recent report from the data place explains it by going even deeper into the numbers. Only about 214,000 homeowners in the whole United States were facing possible foreclosure in the second quarter of 2022, or just 0.4% of the 58 million outstanding mortgages in the U.S. Now, come on. Everybody's going to have something bad happen to them sometime in their life, but it's not because of this market. Of these people facing foreclosure, about 195,000 or 91% had at least some equity built up in their homes. So they really didn't have to go through foreclosure. They could have had somebody come and buy their house and still walked away unscathed. So if you see headlines about the increasing number of foreclosures today, remember, context is important. While it's true the number of foreclosures is higher now than it was last year, as we said, when there's basically none, the foreclosures are still well below pre-pandemic years. If you have any questions about this market, or you're about to go into foreclosure and you want some guidance, please feel free to schedule a Zoom call with me in the first comment link below. And as I always say, here's 2 more videos coming up, and y'all come back now, you hear? Bye-bye.